Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Dylan Muss, and I have with me once again the clown prince of runes, Travis Snell. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. I think this is maybe a record. I don't know. I can't remember if it's been at least 5 or 6 episodes in a row. I've been
A
on
big streak.
Side Quest here. Yeah. So it ends next week, but I am excited to hear some thoughts and talk about just what we've been playing and some stuff we've been doing and everything. So I've not played what you're talking about today, but I've been
Yes,
jumping my toes back in. So it's been
jumping the
quite the
toes.
experience. Yeah, jumping the toes.
How was your camping trip, by the way? How was your weekend?
It was good. Yeah, I went with the family, so that was tons of fun. I haven't been able to squeeze like a camping trip that's like more than 2 days, or I don't know if it's gonna happen this year. So it is nice, but it's always like once you're like settled, then it's like, oh, well, we're packing up again. But it's still good going. So and this was like the water was warm enough to
Nice.
kind of go in. So no, it was a good weekend with and I haven't gone camping with my side of the family in like a couple of years. So it was a good
Cool.
good time. Weather wasn't too hot, not too cold, just right. Had some schmoes, had some banana boats. You ever had a banana boat?
Is that like just banana with chocolate in the
And
middle?
marshmallow. Yeah. So
I
what you
don't.
do
I don't
is
know if did the marshmallow
oh,
add-on
okay. You should. What you do is you get
next
tin
time.
foil, put the banana in tin foil, cut
Mm-hmm.
the banana in half. You put the chocolate, then the marshmallow. You wrap it up nice and tight. Because like I guess if you don't like marshmallow, but yeah, that chocolate when it's like nice and burnt, not burnt, but like nice and cooked. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
try it. Try a banana boat, everyone, if you haven't. It's good stuff. Obviously, you don't like banana, then I'd say skip that one. But
Well, I do love a good banana, so
there you
it
go.
works for me.
Perfect.
I had a very busy weekend too. Most
Hmm.
relevantly here is there was in Vancouver here the Vancouver Retro Gaming
Right.
Convention. So I went to that, which was really cool. There was a ton of people selling games. There was like musical performances. There was setups. So played Melee against some random people, which is
Oh,
always a good
nice.
time. On like the laggiest TV of all time, I'm used to playing on my CRT, but yeah, I went on a bit of a shopping spree. I got Mario Galaxy 2, which I've never played.
R-
Um,
really? Why have you avoided that all these years?
I don't even like. I think back in the day, I might have rented Mario Galaxy, even though I was a big Wii
Hmm.
kid. For some reason, the Mario Galaxy games I wasn't really playing, for whatever reason. So I played Galaxy for the full time or for the like full game when the 3D All Stars thing came on the Switch. Me and Muds played through that whole thing, and that was super fun. And then I've been trying to get Galaxy 2, and I actually found it like for a pretty good price because normally games like that are like 80 to $100, like
Hmm.
the old Wii copies. So that was pretty good. And then in the Nintendo Direct there was that Donkey Kong remake for Switch. I
Yeah.
found that like the 3DS port for that for like $20, so I just bought that instead of waiting and spending $80 on the Switch version. I got a physical copy of Spelunky, which was like a limited
Oh, that's
edition
cool.
thing. So that's pretty nice to have on the shelf, and then just a couple random like $10 pickups as well. So I went ham, picked up some things. I haven't played any of them yet, but
Oh yeah.
I'm sure in the next few months I'll report back on how those went on
There we go.
here on SideQuest. But yeah, today's episode we're gonna be talking about Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, the first DLC, and maybe the only one, is out now. It's gonna be more of an impressions because, of course, this DLC is freaking huge, and I'm
Yeah.
only one man over the course of a couple days. So put a few hours in. We're gonna talk about 2015's Mad Max,
Hmm.
hot off Furiosa, even though it's been a
Yeah.
couple months now. But
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about
Only
that.
1 month. Only 1 month. So
One
we're
month.
good. We're good.
It
Yeah.
feels like so long ago now.
I know. Yeah.
We're so far down the road. And then I also played through some of the Alan Wake 2 DLC, so I'll talk about that as well. And then maybe one bonus game. We'll see if we get to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what we got on the docket for today. Let's just get right into it. I want to start with Elden Ring. I know you were
Mhm.
busy this weekend, haven't had a chance to jump in.
Well,
but
and you gotta, as we learned the days leading up, you have to beat a certain boss, which I had not beaten before.
yeah, which like
So
how soon in advance did they announce that? Was it truly just like a few days? Because if so, that is truly brutal. That's not just like a boss that most people will have
yeah.
passively done. Like, it's one of the hardest bosses in the game who's in a very hidden area. So it's crazy that they did that.
I feel like it was just the day. Like I had heard nothing up until the point that I had messaged you, and then I saw lots of trending stuff and articles like how you beat this boss and etc. So I'm not sure. Maybe it was something they were never going to announce, and maybe it was like when playthroughs came out, people said, "Oh, well, to do this, you got to access." Because it wasn't. I don't think they've ever had them be like, "Oh, and to enjoy this DLC, you need to do X, Y, and Z." It just felt like the player base and like the gaming community found out about it, and that
Mm-hmm.
which is like, it's interesting. Is not that they have any issues, because I imagine it's going to sell well. It is strange to make it that like that you just have to beat them. I'm not mad about, because my plan is okay. As I've said before, I've officially now signed up to Backlog, so now I'm starting to make my
Mm-hmm.
gaming plan list. And
Nice.
my plan is pretty much just to play Elden Ring at least until Outlaws is out. So I don't know what I'll do, even though I'll get to DLC then. But that's my plan, just to like, okay, play it to them. But it is odd to do. It'd be different if it's like the first boss, right? Like you got to beat, what was it, Galdrick or what was his first name?
Oh yeah, Margit. Yeah.
Okay, that one. Like that.
Godric was a different boss, I believe.
Okay, so that one I think I've beat. So, but with Margaret, it's like, okay, you got to beat that, and that would make sense. It's like, okay, it's like the first area. It's like Limegrave, right, or whatever. So it's like, okay, to get the DLC, or am I wrong on that? Is it not Limegrave?
Limgrave. I'm just
Limgrave?
loving these like slight
Yeah.
mispronunciations.
It's
Limegrave just sounds so close to LimeWire for me. Imagine if they just
Yeah.
called the first area LimeWire. That'd
The
be
map
amazing.
looks like the LimeWire logo.
Yeah.
No, to me, it's like that in Star Wars names. You listen to any Star Wars review, I'm butchering
Oh,
all
yeah.
those names. But like that, I'd understand, because okay, that's the first area. You kind of have to complete that in the DLC. Luckily, they sold very well, reviewed very well, so I don't think it's any issue. But it was, I found it odd, and that's where it kept me from like, okay, because I'd never fully completed and I'd never gotten to this one. So I'm just gonna be XP farming and doing some stuff. I had read like, oh, the fastest way to get your XP and runes up is just going to those side caves. But it's like, yeah, but some of those side caves suck. It's like, yeah. So I think it was just the game community that figured it out, or somehow found out about this cap for the DLC. So
Yeah, because you think it's like that's so far after release that it's not necessarily like a. I guess it is could still be a spoiler for some people because like you, for
Yeah.
example, put a lot of time into the game, but it's like a hard game. It takes a lot of time to get.
oh
through it.
yeah,
So you
and
might
other
you
games
just-
come out
in the
so.
time that you've played, you still just haven't by chance happened upon that guy. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's weird. They should have, if they hadn't, they should have announced it well in advance
Yes,
because of
because
just the
I would have
difficulty.
prepped more. Because all I want to do is like, well, I'm just gonna get in there, fine tune, get back on the bike, and then I'll get this DLC. But then I was like, okay, I still got to do that. But again, some extra motivation. But yeah, I haven't even bumped into this boss yet. So that's the
Yeah.
thing where it wasn't like, oh, I found him and then I'll come back. It's like, no, I still got to go that way. So.
From what I remember, his area, like leading up to the boss itself, isn't that huge of an area, so it shouldn't take that
Okay.
long. And if you just like run past enemies and go for his
yeah,
like for the touch the grace and all that and just skip like through the areas there, you should be able to
Okay.
do it pretty quick.
yeah.
But
I just gotta
who
make
knows?
sure my HP is good, because I put a lot into my strength, but I realized I need a bit more HP for some of these later bosses,
Gotta
because
balance it out.
they can take you down, So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want to talk around this game a little bit and then get into the specifics of the DLC here. But yeah, like for anyone who wasn't listening or missed those episodes or just forgets because it's been a couple of years now, we did 2 fully dedicated Elden Ring episodes. One which was more of like an impressions cast, and then there was a full-on spoiler discussion, and then kind of in between there it came up just in the games we've been playing section. So if you want to find all that stuff, the best place I guess would be the Sidequest specific feed, because on
Yeah.
the Geek First main feed it might get kicked out by now. YouTube
Do a
playlist
search.
or Patreon doesn't have a limit of stuff, right? Like all the old
No,
stuff.
you can just
Yeah.
search on Patreon. I
So search on
found
Patreon too if you want to get the
Yeah.
ad-free version.
that's how the X-Men retros went back in the feed. I just searched them on Patreon. They're all still
Right.
there, so it worked out great.
Download 'em,
So
good to go.
Mhm.
So yeah, three dedicated, or I guess 2.5, I'll say dedicated Elden Ring episodes. A lot of discussion around that, and then of course end of the year, game of the year stuff. Talked about it a bunch more. And yeah, I really loved the base game. I definitely have a rocky road when it comes to From Software stuff. Like
Mhm.
Dark Souls 3 is one of my favorites, and I love that game. But that's more. It's partly about the game itself, but then also very much part like a time and place, and when I was playing it with friends, and kind of had this whole community around it. And then the other games, like I've, put like 10 hours into Sekiro and then kind of fell off. I've played like a few hours of Bloodborne, a few hours of Dark Souls 2, and never really got into it. And the Dark Souls 1 is the one I've spent a lot of time with as well. I put like 40 hours into it, but then fucking Crystal Caves, which is just the worst designed area of like maybe any game ever. I absolutely hate that area, and that's where I ended up quitting. So the only ones I've beat, Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring. So I've definitely dabbled a lot in these games, but
Nice.
I'm not really a master at any of them. And Elden Ring, yeah, I put like, I think it was 70, 80 hours by the time it took me to beat the final boss, and then like the main bosses. I didn't do 100% every dungeon and all that, but I've done all the kind of main big story things, and maybe not all the quests because the quests make no sense in this game either.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, definitely spent a lot of time with it. But yeah, haven't played it like I finished all that stuff like maybe 3 or 4 months after the game came out. Haven't really revisited it at all. And I've talked about this before on Sidequest how I'm very hit and miss when it comes to DLC for games like this. If it's like a live service game or an online focused game, DLC makes sense, pretty straightforward there. But then I feel like with other DLC for games like this, like I always think of Horizon Zero Dawn and how that DLC came out and it was like, oh, here's some like really challenging extra content, but it came out long enough after the release that I'm like, man, I'm bad at this game again, and like jumping into harder content is not what I need right now, and so I end up bouncing off it. Or just even for games like Resident Evil Village, which I loved, I just like, I don't really need this DLC. I kind of got my experience there. And honestly, when it came to Elden Ring, I was kind of like, I wanted to get into it just because, it's going to be one of the most anticipated things of the year. But my hype level was kind of lower on it because I feel like, I kind of went through my Elden Ring journey. And so I think jumping into this, it's taken me a bit to kind of get back into the flow of things. And because obviously, like, From Software games are such a polarizing experience with high highs and low lows.
Yeah.
And I think just trying to get back into the cycle of it, back into Elden Ring 1, it doesn't take that long to remember the buttons and all that because, like, my build is simple. I'm a slow dude. I spam roll and I use one big axe. And
like you do the big roll too, like the heavy roll and everything?
No, I definitely keep my weight down enough so I get a quick roll. But like I don't block at all. I've never parried in this game once. I don't even really ever use the lock on. Like I've got a very specific style. I love using torrent. If I can do any battle on the horse, I usually will. So I feel like I'm a pretty simple play style. So it actually helped me kind of get back into the groove of it. And I think, the first couple hours, like I went through one area, it was pretty simple, but pretty small. And then I started going through this other kind of castle area and got to a boss, which I think is one of the main like story bosses.
And this is in the DLC now, or is this in the original?
This is in the DLC now, yeah.
Okay, original.
Getting into the DLC, like, got to this one boss after getting through this tougher area. And, this boss had like a cutscene, which just means he's like more of a story-focused one.
Yeah.
And absolutely destroying me, kicking my ass, just like destroying me relentlessly. I died like probably 10, 15 times. And I was getting pretty frustrated. I'm like, man, I've seen all this Discord of like, is this DLC too hard? I'm like, yeah, this DLC is way too hard. Frick, I hate this. But then it's like, oh yeah, I got to remember, like, this is Elden Ring and this is not a Dark Souls game. I can just go anywhere else and go do a million other things instead of bashing my head against the wall. And so that's what I did. I disappeared, went to go check out some other areas, left that boss behind, put a marker on my map so I don't forget about him. And then because of that, I've been kind of enjoying the experience a lot more. I've found, I'm like maybe 5 or 6 hours in. I've just defeated 5 or 6 bosses in that amount of time. Had some good fights. Nothing too tricky after that one that I kind of skipped out on. A couple harder ones, more just like a big enemy health bar. But yeah, so far it's just like more Elden Ring. It's more of the same. Okay. And since this game is so good and interesting, that's really all you need, at least so far. Like I don't know what other kind of new interesting mechanics there is or areas that are particularly interesting. So far it's been more like par of the course in terms of aesthetics and enemy types. But yeah, like once again, that's kind of all I really need for this kind of thing. So yeah, it's been fun getting back in there. And I think they do a couple really smart things. One is like the level up system in this. Of course, it's Elden Ring, so it's confusing. The item descriptions suck and don't make sense, but do a little Googling. There's these it's called like the Skaju tree blessing or something like that. And that's kind of like the way that they scale the difficulty. It sounds like what they do is like putting you in this DLC, everyone, no matter if you're level 20, I don't know if you could get to beat Mog by level 20, but let's say you could. Let's say you're level 20 or you're on New Game Plus 12 and you're level 7,000, whatever it is. Like you go into the DLC and you're going to be about the same power level as each other. And then the way it like scales up is, once again, you are just like leveling up your character more and getting, more maximum health and damage. But then as you're getting these blessings, that's scaling your damage reduction, that damage you do. And then there's different ones for leveling up your horse again to get him up to par. And so that's what they kind of have done here to make the balance work. And like it's insane. Like if you compare getting one of those blessings to leveling up once in this game, is nowhere close. Like leveling up is such an incremental thing. I'm like, my character's like a level 140 or something in this game, and when I get a level up, it's good, it's noticeable, but it's like a very minute amount. Whereas these, like I was fighting one boss and each of my hits was doing like 400 damage. I leveled up one of these blessings, and then I was doing 600 damage, like a 50%
Oh, okay.
increase. Like that's pretty drastic for like one upgrade level in this. And obviously it's, a smaller DLC, smaller to the, base game, but I'm sure it's still huge based on experience, like even what I've experienced so far.
Mhm.
So yeah, like the balance of it seems pretty well tuned in that way. And once again, just incentivizing exploration. If you're gonna get, like, it seems like no matter what, some of these early bosses are gonna kick your ass. But just you got to go explore. You got to go find more of these blessings, and some of them are hidden in pretty crazy spots.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there's a ton of them out there. So yeah, definitely that's my biggest recommendation. Is if this is very hard, if you're having a lot of trouble with this DLC, just keep exploring, get more of those blessings because they do a really significant percentage to your
Okay.
like damage and stuff like that. And so I'm sure when I've leveled up a bit more and I go back to that first boss that was really stumping me, I'm sure it'll be a bit better. But man, his hitboxes, I could not read what he was doing. He's just spinning. It's like a tornado just flying at me. So it was really hard to keep track of what was going on.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, so is it pretty much for the DLC like when you start off when you're going, it sounds like it's very much like just the base game where they give you an area, a map, and you can explore it all. I was wondering if it was more streamlined. Like, is it the same way where you're kind of in an area to start and you have to get past something and unlock it? Or is it as, hey, this map that you have, you can just go anywhere from the start?
It seems like from the very, very beginning area, there's kind of like three branching paths you can take. You can go
Okay.
up to this castle area, you can go across this bridge, or you can go, I don't know, down this hill to the other side. And like that one way I went, it was a pretty short area, unless I probably missed some cave somewhere. But I think the idea of that area is you're supposed to go down there, and then like from there you get a crazy view, and you can see off on the horizon and look at like some areas that you can't get to yet, but you're gonna. It's almost
Okay.
like foreshadow of what's good to come. So I would say it feels maybe slightly more linear than like Limgrave, for example.
Yeah.
But even then, man, like the way the amount of forks in the road that this takes, there's so many places so far where I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna drop a marker because I can remember that like I
Mhm.
took a fork here, and then that fork ended up taking me 6 hours. I'm not 6 hours in yet, but like
Yeah.
I just walked for another half an hour before I found anything of interest, and then there was another fork in the road. So it's a lot of that, and I'm sure they'll kind of loop back into each other in some way. But once again, that Elden Ring thing, we're just looking out deep into the horizon and seeing some castle like a million
Yeah. Oh,
miles
it's
away, and
that.
just knowing
Yeah.
someday I'm gonna get there. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that in different regions. And I think one of my favorite and highest highs in the base game of Elden Ring is just going deep into those caves, like Siofra
Mhm.
River and the, what is it called, Ansrial River, whatever. Like just those areas and how they just go down and down and down and down forever, and then you're just in this whole other world. And then
Mhm.
those areas are just massive as Limgraves. It feels like that's very much, maybe not quite to that scale yet, but similar things are happening where I'm just like, oh, this looks like a funny little cave. And then I go down and down and down, and then I pop out of these waterfalls, end up in this whole different area. And then I'm like, oh, I'm back at that place that I saw from that cliff,
Yeah.
when I very much started. So it's a lot of those moments, and that satisfaction is coming in there. And it seems like the similar kind of scale. And, Elden Ring has that map, and every time you get a new map piece, it like rescales the
Mhm.
overall map. And like I've already had a couple of those moments where it's like, oh, wow, this map is bigger than I thought it was. And obviously the base game
Cool.
had a ton of that, so I'm sure that that's going to happen again here.
And is it something that kind of like there's that in the menu when you pause, you go, there's like that round table thing where you can go to, it's like a separate area
Oh,
and you can,
right.
yeah. With this, is it something that's connected to the map that you can go at any point, or is it something you actually have to go and access to get to this world in the DLC?
It's funny, I totally forgot about that round table area. I'm like,
Yeah.
I guess I should go back there sometime.
I go there to for my like whatever the Smitherin or whatnot. Like that's usually
Yes,
where I go
all
because
those
there, yeah, there,
shopkeep kind of guys.
yeah, there is other places, but that's just the go-to. Like, okay, I gotta get this weapon.
Hmm.
It's safe there. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah, so far it's a separate map, and I
okay,
like it. Yeah, I don't think it connects in any way. Like you have a loading screen that takes you there,
okay.
and then I haven't actually tried to leave yet, so I'm not sure how.
Mm.
I'm sure you can go back to the main map at any point, but when I go to my
Yes,
map
yeah.
screen, it's just like the DLC map. So I'm sure there's probably just like hit Y to toggle to the other map, but I haven't felt the need to do that yet. And funny you mentioned the Smith and that roundtable area. One thing that I think is cool too, like a couple areas very early on in this DLC, you go through and like there's just a ton of the smithing stones to collect, which I
Oh,
think is
okay.
smart because I got to a point where like, man, I gotta really use every last one, even if it's like the tier 1. I gotta make sure I'm saving these for the right things. And I feel like
Yeah.
because there's so many new items and weapons that you're gonna be finding in this DLC, I think they tried to have a couple areas where you can almost just farm these infinitively.
Nice.
And so it's one of those things that like even if you're doing a regular playthrough of the game now, and let's say you're on New Game Plus, it might be good to like rush down Mog, get to the DLC area, get to that area, and then you can just like start farming smithing stones that you need if you want to keep upgrading stuff. So it seems like there's a couple like almost quality of life areas where like that area was very easy. There wasn't even a boss there, but it's really just a place to kind of farm smithing stones, which is really nice because I don't know, maybe there's places like that in the base game, but I never really like I know I went through a couple mines, but I didn't know if they were infinitive sources of those or just kind of
Yeah.
you know, you're gonna get 20 smithing stones here or something like that.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess I don't really feel the need to spoil anything yet, especially because you're haven't got to this stuff yet, and I'm not super deep into it. We will do a more spoilery discussion when you're further into it. Who knows? That could take a while,
Yes,
but we'll do it eventually. But yeah, I one thing I've seen a ton of discourse on this online is just people saying the DLC is too hard, and obviously
I've seen that a lot. Yeah,
I have not beaten it yet, so I have no idea. But I do feel like this understanding how powerful those blessings are and how much they affect your stats, it's insane how much they affect your stats. So I feel like if my inclination would be to say that no, I doubt this DLC is going to be a whole lot harder, but you just have to upgrade your character again. It doesn't matter if you're on New Game Plus 7, like you're gonna have to go through this new level up process. Sorry if you feel like you wanted to grind hard to be ready for Erdtree, but it seems like they wanted to kind of balance the scales, which I think is the right thing to do for a game that's been out for this long, and you're going to have people, at all sorts of levels of difficulty and skill. So I don't know, maybe I'll come across a couple bosses that are super difficult, but I'm curious if that anyone as difficult as Melania, because that boss fight was absolutely stupid difficult in the main game. So we'll see if that happens.
And for me, I also wonder too if it's a conscious choice because, like you said, those blessings, so maybe people can go around and focus on that. But it's also, I can't remember is there a time like stamp for how long this is roughly? Obviously, there is. I'm not sure if you know, but it's not as long as the main game, right? So my idea is just kind of like they can kind of make it harder in a way because it's less time, but that almost makes it more time because if you were just, I feel like if they were to make it, you just stream roll through all the bosses in the areas, you'd have the opposite effect. Well, not that'd be too easy, but people would be like, oh, they made a big deal because this was it's like a big DLC. You pay for it separately. It's almost treated as like a mini second game, right? So to me, them making it hard kind of makes sense as far as, hey, there's less game, but it might take you a little longer to get through certain areas where, like, if let's say this game was 20 hours, maybe the first 20 hours of Elden Ring, you could go a lot further and do a lot more, but because the difficulty is a little harder there, I think that's something that they can kind of make you feel like you're getting more bang for buck, even if it's frustrating, which I do understand, because I feel like there's a point where if you just feel like you can't progress anymore and you just don't want to go back and go through another cave or go XP farm, because sometimes it's like, okay, this is a little monotonous, especially in that, because I wonder in the main game, at least right now where I am still, I'm like, okay, if this is too hard or I'm not liking this area, I still have a lot kind of in the right corner of the map that I haven't explored, where I feel like in the DLC that will be something where people explore a lot and they're just stuck on a boss, then that might feel a little repetitive. So I could see that aspect of, I just can't beat this guy and I really don't just want to do this over and over. I don't just want to kill enemies. I don't want to go back to the New Game Plus and update my character. So I do get a portion of that, but that is the novelty of these games, right, with the no difficulty and stuff. So
yeah, no, that's a good point. With the DLC gonna, like, no matter what, it is smaller, there's less scale, there's less bosses, there's less of all of that. In terms of that element of it, of like, yeah, this is way too hard, I'm gonna go do something else, I wonder if you'll bump into a wall where it's like, okay, well, now there's really, like, the only two ways to progress would be to kill either of these two bosses, and like they're both really hard. So I don't know, I guess there's probably still more exploration you could do at that point. But I don't know, from Software, they said that this DLC is comparable to the size of Limgrave, but then I saw people saying that almost immediately, like, yeah, that's a lie. It's way bigger than
that's
Limgrave.
what I heard too.
So,
yeah, that's what.
So yeah, I think time is so hard because even on our when I did a discussion on this game, on the base game with Cooper and Dante, they're like, masters of these, played all these games multiple times, so they're way better at these games than me. But it took them longer to like beat the main boss because they did so much more exploration and stuff that I didn't even know existed, and they went through like every cave, made sure they checked like every corner of the map, whereas I was kind of less thorough in that way. So I think there's there's gonna be so much variance on like the mileage of how long it'll take each individual person. But yeah, if that's the size of it, then I don't know. I imagine I'll get another 20 hours out of it for myself. I mean, I'm already 5-6 hours in, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. Like I said, I don't think I've killed any of the quote unquote essential bosses at this point. I've mostly just killed bosses that are like roaming around in the open world, and then a couple of those kind of legacy dungeon little cave entrance things too. So yeah, I'm excited to play more of it. It's been fun to get back into it, man. I missed my character of Viljul, who just looks like he looks like a final boss at this point, with like the armor I have, with like how weathered he is, the huge axe that I use, and the different big weapons that I've used. I haven't unfortunately found like a new exciting weapon yet, because
I was going to ask you about that.
There's been a couple, like one I found is like an anvil on a stick, and I'm like, I want to use that. It's like totally in my wheelhouse of big, heavy, blunt object, but it requires me to have a pretty high int stat, I think, intelligence, which like my character is not. He's big, dumb, and strong, and that's about it. So I don't have any of the faith or intelligence stats. So unfortunately, I can't really effectively use that. Which that's one thing I guess slightly bothers me about some of these weapon types in these games, is how ineffective they are if you don't have like the perfect stats, I guess. Especially if it's a big anvil. Like, come on, I'm a big, strong guy. Let me swing this thing around. But
especially when it's like, if like it's a stat that's like a massive jump up. Like I wish there was maybe, which I get it though, because that's the way you could play a new character. But I just feel like if something to scale in a way where, okay, maybe it's just 1 or 2 stats, where sometimes it's like, oh, you got to have this and you got to be.
Oh, like I've never been at a point where I'm like 2 int away. It's like I'm always like 15 int off. I'm not going to invest all these runes to get to that point. But I guess if there's infinitive new game pluses and like there's no level cap, I don't think that eventually you could have high enough stats to, I guess, be proficient with all the weapons. But that's not the kind of experience I'm personally looking for. I think maybe that's a good place to leave it for Elden Ring. I don't know if there's much else to say for now, but yeah, it's been a really good time so far, and I'm excited to jump into it some more. How about let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. We're going to talk about an older game, 2015, Mad Max.
Yeah.
So this is a game that is made by Avalanche, the Just Cause team, which is interesting. And I know that you're a fan of at least 1 or 2 of those games.
At least 3.
At least 3 of those games. Okay.
No, I meant like the 3rd.
Number 3. Okay.
That's the only one I've played, but I was an instant fan, and my plan is to get to 4.
Around this game, I feel like, in terms of release dates.
Pretty within the first. Within
I feel
that
like 4
year
was like a 2019 or something like that. So
yeah,
I'm making up numbers.
It's tough because I feel like. It's tough because when I played it, it was a PlayStation Plus game, so I feel like I played it after Mad Max, but it could have very well came out around the time or before.
Whoa, 2015? Did it come out the same year as Mad Max?
2 games. Look at that. Impressive. Look at that.
That is pretty crazy. That is very, very impressive. So this Mad Max game, so obviously you've been a Mad Max fan for a long time. Did you play this when it came out?
I did. I think it's pretty close because you said 2015, right? And so I think
that's when it came out.
This was like one of those where we're like in the dying era of they were close enough to when the movie was out, so it was that hype. I remember when they announced it, and I didn't know really and that's when I was not like where we are now, where I have a better idea of studios and whatnot. They announced it, like, okay, that's cool. But the thing is, for me, I was never a big car guy, so it wasn't really on the radar. But when Mad Max came out, I was like, okay, I'm gonna scratch it. So I think if I didn't get it because I purchased the game like full price, if I didn't get like the day of it, was within the release window or a couple weeks. So yeah, it was early on when I got it. So
nice. And I know this is like one of those games that you loved back in the day, and you've always talked about it. And then I've heard like 1 or 2 people talk about it since. Like it lives so far under the radar. But I obviously hadn't played it until just the last couple weeks. I've been playing it for the first time because it was deeply on sale on Xbox. I think I got it for like $3 or something like that. But yeah, what do you think of this game? Especially like, I don't know, coming back to it after a few years and you haven't played it, how is it hitting in 2024 for you? Now that you've played like a million other open world games since then.
Yeah, well, one thing that is was cool that during the Furiosa movie, there was like I think a little uptick in people wanting to play it or people talking
Right.
about like, hey, you should really do that. Learned that the developer said that they had a bunch of DLC planned, but it got cut out from the leg, so that was a bummer for me.
Dang,
So
just because of bad sales for the
I
game?
think so,
Mm.
yeah, because I don't think it did that well. And like you said, you've probably heard a couple people talk about it, but I feel like it is a really underrated gem. And I hadn't played it for many years. I messaged Jill and I so bummed I lost my save file.
Oh,
I
dang.
even went to my PS4, didn't find it on there at all. So I really don't know what happened to it. So I was looking forward to getting my souped up vehicle all, and I had done the main story, done a lot of side quests, had a lot of the territories down. So I was kind of starting from scratch. So right away that was a bummer, but now I've pretty much just done I did the few main missions you had to do, and then I did nothing but side missions or just taking down the territory, and I still really enjoy it. And I guess what I've said before, where I don't think it's like revolutionary, but there's just something enjoyable about you'll be on the road and you see a car or they ram you and then it's like, okay, I want to take this thing down, especially once you get that harpoon going and you can get that
Yeah.
like leveled up. So it's just like I think it's just kind of things that we talk about like Midnight Suns and other games we have in common where for me it's a just the cycle is fun. And there's so many times where I will have a mission and I'm going somewhere, but they're like, oh, this thing has some valuable loot, and it like or it just has like a cool skull, and you're like, oh, I'd like that. And here you are, half an hour later, because I love it. It's not the same extent of Elden Ring that we were talking about, but like technically, almost everything in this game you can do at any point. It's just the level like how much time do you want to waste on this, right? You
Okay.
can go
Yeah.
take down a truck in a Ramada, but if they're like certain levels, it could take you a while. And I at especially because me, I'm playing the mindset of I've done this before, I've been here, so I'm taking on these enemies that I shouldn't really be taking on right now. It's kind of a waste of time, but I'm like, well, no, I've beaten this game before, so I did that, but it takes a while. And there's certain I think like boss battles, of course not, but that's why like you can kind of go not anywhere, but for the most part, just kind of go out. And like I said, I did the main story, and then I did probably 3 or 4 days of nothing but side quests, and it wasn't at any point like, oh, you're locked, you can't do this, or there's things going on. I think there's certain parts of the map, but for the most part, they let you free roam quite a bit. Again, when you get into an area you're not supposed to be, and you're gonna feel it, but if you play smart enough and you're not careless, you can get past it. And yeah, there's just something about for me it's the gameplay is like the fighting combat is fine. It's like a lesser Arkham in my opinion. It has that sort of thing. It doesn't
Right.
I don't think it's as smooth as the Arkham games. You don't have as much gadgets as like a Spider-Man and Batman, so that makes it a little
I
less
think the
fun.
animations are fantastic though.
Yeah,
And
and the sound
it
design
does have a
too.
really good feel, even though it is
Yeah.
quite simple. And I mean, there is upgrade trees all over the place for like even
Oh
just the
yeah.
hand to hand combat and whatnot. So I'm sure it'll get a bit better. But I actually like it for what it is. If I don't know,
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a bit tedious, but once again, maybe I just need to get my power up so I can take people out quicker.
Yeah, like you got a light attack, you got a heavy attack, you got a fury, you got a finisher, and then you can pick up melee weapons, which actually are kind of fun when you get those. And I like
Yes.
that they make them do a lot of damage. So that stuff's all fine and dandy. But for me, it's the car combat. There's nothing better than you time a jump and like you hit your boost at the same time and you hit a car and you just see vehicles fly everywhere and parts. And like I said, or if you can just time where you can get a door off and then harpoon a driver and just pull them out. Like that's what I like. Where at first it looks like it could just be, especially when it's a bunch of vehicles. That's when to me it's almost like there's a chess match too. Because yeah, you could just go ram them, but no, it is a thing of okay, this guy's door I can take off, but this guy's door I can't. This guy I can ram, this guy I can ram, but it's really not going to do much damage. If I could take out these drivers, then I'll be kind of two versus one, or I could, go for the blow of try to like jump out the vehicle and go hand to hand, but sometimes there's lots of guys and there's always going to be one car that's like going to keep trying to run you over. So I love the scenarios, and for me it's especially as it goes along updating the car. And again, not a car guy at all, but I feel like that I don't care so much about the max skill tree. I actually am not a fan of many of the options because it's just stuff like your water is better, your fuel's better. Like it's
Right.
very, very basic upgrades. But the car stuff, that for me actually feels like it has some purpose to it, whether it's the look or just like I said, the harpoon. I'm all about the harpoon. So the second again, so satisfying when you can get a tire and you go down a cliff and you rip it off. It's great stuff. So I still have tons of fun with it. And it scratched the itch. I put on Spotify and put on the Mad Max and Furiosa
Oh,
soundtrack. Yeah,
nice.
so just doing that. So yeah, it was really good. I don't think I'm gonna go and beat the whole main campaign again unless I run out of stuff. I think right now I'm kind of more focused on Elden Ring, but I returned it and had it was a point where I was playing it, and you have that time you go, oh, I should have went to bed by now, and that's the sign of, okay, I still enjoy this game. Or even the first night in Elden Ring, there was part of me like, I don't know if I want to get back into this, because it's not fun, but it's just like that's such a challenge. And Mad Max is not that level of challenge, but then same thing. Eventually, keep going. The Elden Ring is like, okay, now I'm 3 hours past bedtime. I'm back in the cycle. Okay, I found it. But Mad Max, I still was having a good time. I think it's a fun representation of the world. I think the sound design is really cool. So yeah, I think it's like a really just fun, underrated game that I wish did do better. Just so I get that DLC, but it's a game that I'm happy I physically own, because it's one of those, like, I don't know if you're ever going to be always able to buy it in the future, because it is such like a lower tier game. So
Right.
this is one I'm happy
Especially
I have.
when any license thing, you always
Absolutely.
worry someday something's gonna expire, whether it's a character likeness or a song or
Yes.
something, and then it's gonna just be taken off the store without any notice, usually too, which is the worst
Every
part.
day, because it's also my algorithm, but not every day. I'll say like every week, if I log on Twitter, there's somebody either talking about the old Marvel games or the Lord of the Rings games, where it's just
Yeah.
like, man, I would love to get these games back, but it's like you're just stuck. Anytime PlayStation like, oh, we're bringing some PS2 classics, I see that Aragorn on the cover with Gandalf, or everyone's like, oh, I
Yeah.
wish. So that's why I'm happy with this one. It's owned for me. So, but yeah,
You
what
would
about
love
you?
the retro gaming convention, because they just the copies of those games abound.
Oh,
Which
was
is
there?
unfortunate, because
That's
something like
cool.
Ultimate Alliance, like you can't go buy that DLC anymore. But
I
yeah,
know,
there's
yeah.
copies of all those Lord of the Rings conquests and
Did they not have any what was it? Game of the Year editions, because they sold a couple of those after the fact for the first
Ooh.
Marvel Alliance game. It's like a different cover.
But the
So,
thing is, here's the
yeah.
thing with because a lot of those games too, the issue is like backwards compatibility is not eligible for them.
Okay,
So even if
right.
you take Ultimate Alliance Game of the Year and I still have a 360, but like, am I really going to plug in my 360? I guess I
Yeah.
could. I do it
I
every once in a while,
wonder.
but yeah, I don't know if you could just plug it into your Series X, and obviously that would be a PS3 game, so PS5 wouldn't have backwards compatibility on it.
I wonder if they still sell them at one point, because I bought them for the PS4. They sold remasters of them on the PS4 in that era of
Okay,
Marvel
yeah,
Alliance 1
my
and 2.
PS4 is still plugged in, so I should look for
Yeah.
that copy. That would
Yeah,
be
so I'm
good.
not sure if it's there, but that's cool. That's cool that they had those. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I said, hadn't played this game back in the day, and even though, I heard you say that it was good and fun, I still had
Dylan
very
didn't
little.
trust me back then. Like, I don't
It's
know.
not that. It's just that I didn't really know what to expect for
Yeah.
the actual. Like, of course, it's gonna be like car combat, but that's like as much as I would expect from it. Or going into it knowing there's gonna be something like that. But yeah, I've been really pleasantly surprised with it. I'm having an amazing time. I think this is
Oh,
such
yeah?
a fun freaking game on like just the minute to minute gameplay part of
Mhm.
it. I feel like the checklisty open world is almost like a derogatory term these
Yeah.
days, but I think this game like nails it in terms of like, there's all sorts of things you can and can't do, but I think I'm in that same kind of a cycle as you, where I'm not really doing any critical path stuff. I'm more just like what seems fun in this moment, or maybe I
Mhm.
want to go for a certain base upgrade so then I can make more currency when I'm not even playing the game, and like
Mhm.
just go for a certain different, like there's so many different options of what I can do, or just like maybe I want to go take down a base and spend the time to like scout it out, or talk to local like other wastelanders who are like scouting out the area and get some intel from them on like a secret entrance. Like that stuff is super fun. So yeah, like I think the gameplay is really fun, and obviously like when you have one of these checklist like icon vomit games, like obviously there's always something to do,
Yeah.
and it's like that's exactly what I want from it. Like I don't want to hunt down the main story of this. I just want like,
Mhm.
if I'm gonna spend half an hour, I'm gonna go do a couple quests, and then maybe that half an hour will turn into an hour because of the
Yeah.
kind of game it is. But
you
like
feel more like
that
Max,
minute to
too.
minute stuff is just like perfect. It's so well tuned, I find.
Yeah. Well, it's funny with this game too, because I feel like it'd be like, oh, they'll introduce like those posts, like whatever they are, where you harpoon them and pull them down,
Yes.
and you just make one. But
Those are
then
so fun.
then you do a balloon, and then you go down your balloon. There's like 10 of them around, and that's where I feel like almost that's what this game does. But that's where in my head can I like playing that, because Max is always this traveler, so that's why it almost feels like it fits that game not to just always go streamline it, because like he's just looking for oil and goods, and there's some fun. I forgot there's like some stuff where you'll go to an area to check it out, and there's like, oh, it's actually underground, and you go there, and there's like
I don't think I've seen any of that really yet, so that's interesting.
yeah, there's one in the middle of the desert. It's like it looks like it's one of those crates, like an orange or brown ones where you have to harpoon it and pull it. And there's one where I found that it was like a ladder that led down. It was like a watery,
okay.
gross area. So there's it. Like for me, it's actually It's funny because I feel like it's in an era of games we might not get anymore, but it's a pretty large game for what I thought a Mad Max game would be. Because I would feel like you'd kind of get half of this, but it's
Hmm.
treated like it's a Assassin's Creed. Ubisoft like a big gonna be a
Yeah,
big
it's not
selling
like a cheap
title.
license game. It is
Yes,
it is a
yeah.
truly ambitious. And I think once I saw, because I didn't know this game was made by Avalanche until I was loading in and saw that opening icon. That's
Mhm.
when my expectations got a bit higher. Like, okay, I think I haven't really played Just Cause a whole lot, but just seeing that gets me pretty excited to see, like, I'm sure, like, the crazy physics and just off
Oh
the wall
yeah.
kind of gameplay that you can expect. But I think the thing that surprised me so much about it is just like how many freaking systems there are in this game of, like, upgrading your vehicle is one thing, and there's
Yeah.
20 different
Tons
ways
of
you can upgrade your
slots. Yeah.
vehicle, and then there's different vehicles you can bring into your garage and work off those, and then there's like the, I forget what the archangels, right? Yeah, like the special cars on top of that, which I don't even understand really what they do yet, but I'll
Yeah.
figure that out at some point. And then yeah, for like Max, there's like that guy you can bring tokens to or
Yeah.
something, and then there's just like, yeah, the base upgrades you can do on your character for like melee combat, but then also just for your character's base stats, and then you're capturing bases, and there's all these upgrades you can get in the bases. So there's just like all these different mechanics going on, and like they're pretty well interconnected, and it's a bit overwhelming if you want to do
Yes.
it all, and a lot of it's just like you got to get scrap, but then there's ways you can get like more efficient at getting scrap, so it kind of all connects together. But it also means that like no matter what you're doing, you're fueling into some upgrade because it all uses like the same currency
Hmm.
for the most part. There is like other minor currencies, but yeah, it's all really well tuned. And I love cars in games. I love driving games. I think I
Hmm.
like driving games more than I like racing games, just when I can screw around. Like GTA, I think that's my favorite part about GTA is just driving.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just
If I'm to
driving.
boil
Yeah.
down what I love about GTA the most, it's just driving, and like the car mechanics feel so good in this game with the physics. And
Hmm.
as you mentioned, the harpoon, like ripping doors off cars or ripping people out of
Oh yeah,
cars
and you're just
is
dragging them for
so good.
miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then whenever you let go and it like slingshots them like a
Oh
hundred
yeah.
meters out, it almost feels a bit too strong to do that. But then I know there's certain cars that are like way more armored, and it's
Hmm.
really hard to actually hit someone with the harpoon. So even in that way, it feels really well balanced. But yeah, I'm just absolutely loving this game so far, and the
Nice.
destructibility of those different towers, like taking down a sniper's nest, or those
Hmm.
like. Half the time, I will shoot my harpoon and bring those towers down, but most of the time, I'm like, how can I get the most speed and just
Yeah. Oh
smash through
yeah.
it and fly off a cliff
Yeah.
as much as
When you
possible?
hit that triple boost too, like you hit it back to back, that's great. And I know it sounds dumb, but I think they did way more in this game than they had to. All they really had to do is the side missions and really nail the car combat to me because
Hmm.
like I know it's a Gold's Mad Max game, but like there's tons of games that
Oh
they
yeah,
don't
this could be a
nail.
game where you don't get out of your car, and that would have been
Yes.
totally acceptable for what it is.
Yeah, or it's just like you hit a car and they instantly explode. Like that's not a main purpose of the game. So that's where for me it was something where it like other than I'm trying to think like you said like GTA has like cars can ram into each other, but there's not car combat. And even when I think of like Twisted Metal, that's a very different thing because a lot of times you're switching to guns and you're shooting bombs. Like that's almost closer to like what a Mario Kart would be. So like this way, it's like I don't think there's too many games out there, at least ones I've played that are very focused on car
Hmm.
combat and car fights where it's like you can ram, you can shoot, you can do the harpoon. There's other ways like the side ram and everything. So I feel like that way it's very unique in a sense. It feels like it just didn't catch on the same way like Lord of the Rings when they had the enemy system. I was like, oh, I
Right.
love that. I feel like if more people found this and fell in love with this combat, it could have had a chance. But I don't think people ever really did. But it's something that I don't think we'll see in a game anytime soon as well either because I just don't think a game that would be like, oh, we got to make sure this car combat's really
Yeah,
good, you
I
know?
feel like oftentimes in open world games like this, cars are pretty disposable. Like
Yeah.
I was talking about Watch Dogs recently, and in that, like I don't think you can really upgrade or change cars in any way. And you can get a couple extra skills for them, but for the most part, it's like you may just grab a car off the street and use that for a bit. But like
Yes.
GTA, obviously, you can customize your cars pretty significantly. I think like Crackdown did a really good job of that, where
Okay.
like driving is one of the 5 stats in that game, and then there's the certain like agent vehicles, and like if your driving stat is like high enough, the cars like transform like transformer styles into like upgraded versions in real time, and then you get like way more control with them. So I don't know, I think in open world games when there's like customization to the vehicles and like meaningful customization, that's when it gets pretty good. How I wanted to ask you about that, like, because so far I feel like car combat, it's like pretty simple. I'm ramming into
Yeah.
people. I have like the ability to like chisel into them. I guess I don't know what you call that when you hit them on the side and just keep bustling into them. And then
Oh
there's
yeah.
the harpoon. I of course have the sniper, but you're never really gonna use the sniper like mid fight. And so obviously I'm seeing in the skill trees and whatnot, like there's other things. But do you remember much of how it kind of evolves, or the layers that you found the most interesting when you get later into the game?
I guess for me, because that's where I'm streamlining. I feel like the harpoon, because I've put in so much work into it now again. Because that's what I do like, where it's like you just got to take down the territory and have the money. Especially when you get to, like harpoon level, I think I'm on 4 or 5. It costs a lot of money to the point where you should be doing the main mission to get it, but I'm not wanting to do that. I feel like that's the unfortunate part where I think the vehicles just get tougher, and maybe it's something where you might need to pull it more, or you might need to ramp more. But I don't think there's anything too much more than that. It just feels like it gets more action packed and fast paced with these vehicles are going to be a lot harder, and it's not. I feel like near the end of the game when you start mainlining it, there's not many vehicles. Like there are when you're out in the wasteland, but when you're doing the main stuff, there's not too many that you're just going to be able to get a good, nice ram and just explode it right away. It's like it's stuff that you're going to do some damage, but that's what I really think is they just kind of increase the difficulty of the cars or the amount of cars. But I don't think there's too much more. Like obviously you got the shotgun as well too. We didn't talk about, which that is always fun when you get a vehicle that has that the fire like a fire gasoline, and then that takes them. Yeah, so that's always nice. So because I don't really use the shotgun when I'm fighting, I don't.
Well, you have so little ammo for it, at least like
Yes.
early levels of the game. Like maybe you're gonna have 2 shots in it. That goes pretty quick.
Which I feel like the first playthrough I did this, I'm doing it again. I'll many times accidentally shoot the shotgun. I don't know why. It just slips sometimes.
I do that
but
too.
so but that's where the shotgun for me, that's a game changer with the vehicles. So I think they just get harder, maybe some more, but not anything massive. I think it's just expanding upon the things you have already.
Right. Is there like trucks or bigger vehicles?
Like to fight or to drive?
Either, I guess.
I think you do get bigger vehicles, especially like I think there's a couple like boss battles where there's some that are more souped up. I think with the driving, I don't think it's anything more than like a regular truck, and you can kind of soup that up. But I think they kind of keep to the more faster, speedy.
I feel like that would have been a DLC type thing, so that's too bad.
Possibly, yeah.
And how about you have a dog in this game that you kind of you find him and then you lose him, and and then you get him again, and I'm pretty sure he's on the box art. Like, does he? Do you get an upgrade where you can put him in any car, or is it just in Chumbucket's car that you can bring him around with you?
If there is an update, I never got that, or it's been so long that I don't remember that, because I remember him not being a big vital part of the.
Because I know he helps you with like minefields, and like in theory he was once for me, but like I could not understand what he was telling me, so I just drove into a landmine and the car blew up. So I don't know, but I thought it would be interesting if that was like added to. I guess it would be more like ground hand-to-hand combat where he would. It'd be like a
special attack, like an Elden Ring. You have your spirits, and you can send the dog. But I feel like that was maybe probably something that hit the budge of like, like to do this, but we can't. So what are some minor things we do? Oh, the mine fillies in the car. But I don't think there's anything I can think of where it's like, he can do an attack off the ground from the vehicle. Nothing that I would recall.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying any one of these open world games. I feel like the highlight open world thing is usually going to an enemy outpost and taking those down. Like in Ghost of Tsushima, that was like, one of the highlights for sure. And I really like it in this game, as I mentioned, kind of scouting it out, finding information. They give you the binoculars, so you're supposed to go up on a hill somewhere, scout it out, and then usually there's someone giving you info. But I like that idea of like kind of going around the perimeter, using your sniper, maybe taking out some snipers or taking out some points of interest, taking out those explosive barrels to get your way in. And then you can like take your car in a little bit and maybe take out a couple enemies, but then it kind of transitions into the ground combat. And I just feel like that flow is really fun so far. I feel like I've done a few of those, and I feel like no matter what, those are always going to be engaging because the level design of them is pretty interesting. Like the big kind of
some of those camps are really cool. Yeah. There's just like because some of them are basic where that's why like you never know what you're gonna get, where it could just be a ground level and that's it, and then some have like a big. I can't remember in the first territory. I think one of the last ones I did was like going up multiple layers, and there was like a big tower, and you had to like swing on everything. Like it was a lot, and plus two, I like that. Maybe this people that wouldn't like this, but I enjoy that. I feel most of the camps when they have like you can find your insignia and all the things. I feel like they don't hold your hand, but I also just personally like that there is a counter, and it kind of you have an idea of it's not just like a a percentage, or they give you a percentage. But imagine if you went to every camp, it's like you found 20% of the things here. I like that's actively like, no, you're looking for 4 more of these things. You're looking for
Yeah.
one more thing of this, because I think with this game, there's already so much that does help, and then that makes it that I think I double back. But I feel like the good thing is with most of these campsites and even some of the main mission stuff, it's never too huge where I feel like, oh, if I miss something here, I'm gonna have to go replay or start all the way over. It's like there's usually like a ladder or some other maybe way to get back. So I appreciate kind of maybe it's a little hand holding to get you those all the collectibles, but I like that because it gets you a little more gears and
Mm-hmm.
whatever nuts and bolts. So I
Yeah.
appreciate
I mean, I
it.
think it's good to have, especially in a game like this that is very minimal on like the color palette, and so
Mm,
things can kind of blend in with each other. Not like usually the scrap like is glowing and the insignias are red and all, but even just in the environments, it's like maybe not obvious where a room or a door is, so it can be hard to find some of that stuff. But
yeah.
working well for me. Um, do you what do you think of like the story and characters? Like, how does it kind of stack up to your I don't know, just general Mad Max knowledge, or do you remember much about the
Mm, I
main
remember.
quest from when
I
you played it
remember
back in the day?
I remember enjoying it quite a bit. I feel like it's the usual. Mask gets in some trouble. There's some more alerts. I think it's definitely more in the ilk of Furiosa and Fury Road, just because it is made around that time. So even like the characters, like the War Boys and stuff like that, those aren't like constant in the Mad Max franchises. It's not
Okay.
like the War Boys aren't always come back. It's usually a new villain, which is funny because in the movies he has a little boy, but then in this game he loses a little girl. So it's strange. Like they even changed some stuff there. So it's like
Mm.
semi connected to the movie, semi not. But no, I think there's some good hijinks. Like even the first boss you fight here, he's a big warlord that has like a big. I think he might be. Funny enough, like I think he has the name of one of the characters we were talking about. Like what happened to him in Furiosa? I think it was like
Mm.
Scrotus or something you fight. But no, I think for the most part there's a fun little twist and turns. But I think it's like a good nothing earth shattering, but everything feels right within the world. And
Yeah.
like Max isn't going a big journey, but I feel like there's a few different spots as far as feeling somewhat variety, because it is tough. You're in a desert, right? But just certain missions or characters. So, and I think what could have been annoying is Chum Bucket, but I think he actually ends up being an enjoyable character. Because
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time getting the game, being like, oh, how many times do you have the annoying sidekick that you don't care about? But they almost make him so pathetic and annoying. It's almost like the Gollum effect. So
Yeah.
I think between upgrading the car, that character, and a little people you meet along the way, I think the story is solid because it was one that I completed years ago. So I think it's a good time.
Yeah. I mean, I have way less knowledge or history with these movies. Seen Fury Road and Furiosa, of course, but
Mhm.
only one time each. But yeah, like everything seems consistent, and like the on terms of world building side of it, I'm buying into it. And I do love Chum Bucket. I think he's a
Yeah,
good
he's
time.
great.
So yeah, and I really like too that he's obviously on the car with you at
Oh
all
yeah.
times. Because yeah, I think that's one thing that as we talked about with like other open world games, cars end up being disposable, and so they kind of like the car itself usually doesn't have personality. But like games with a horse as a companion, as like the mode of travel, have more personality. Like I love Torrent in Elden
Yes.
Ring, or the horse in Ghost of Tsushima is awesome. Even like Shadow of Colossus, you get like really attached to these characters as like an extension of you. And I feel like that is kind of happening in this game because Chum Bucket's there with you. And as soon as you hop out, he like starts repairing it. He's giving all these things names. The cars have names. You're getting to pick even the body of it, so you're feeling more ownership over it. And so I think that really works to it. But yeah, do you ever get like more people or switch people out on your car? Is there like a roster
Not that
side of
I
it? Or is it really just
remember.
Chum Bucket with
I
you?
think it's just Chum Bucket.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall anybody. If it was, maybe it's for like a solo mission. But no, I think Chum Bucket's with you majority of the time. That
I
also
love
could
that
have.
guys will jump onto your car mid combat
Yes,
too. Like
that's
they'll
great.
ditch their own car just to if they feel
Yeah.
like maybe they can't keep up with you. That's their next best effort.
And another thing that I really like too that keeps the momentum of the game. Again, some people might view it as like almost a cheat, but I like that when you exit your vehicle and if it's damaged, Chum Bucket's working on it. Because like you said,
Hmm.
there's already so much stuff you have to go on with finding gears and gas. I like that gas is the thing that hey, if you run out of this, you're kind of
They're
screwed.
pretty generous with that,
And they
at
are,
least
right?
as
But at
well.
least that's the thing you need to get, which all the movies are usually about fuel. So I like that. I just there's a version of this game where they make it almost more punishing of your vehicle getting damaged, and I think that would kill that cycle of imagine if anytime your vehicle got like down to zero, it's like, well, you got to go walk for miles and find another one. It's like, oh boy, like, is this something I really want to do? No. And that's where I think it's fun that, okay, if your vehicle gets destroyed, you got to get out. Maybe you got to wait 5 minutes, but there's stuff to do. And most of the time for me, when it gets destroyed, I'm in the middle of a fight. So and it does, like, the good thing is it's not that Chum Bucket has to like get it all the way to the top. It's usually just has to get it back past like the fire and the green.
Right.
And then if it's like 25%, you can get in there and maybe get away from the fight. Or maybe if that vehicle is just like a few more hits, you can feel like, oh, I could sacrifice this. So that's just like, it's a simple one, but I think that was smart to do. Even if it would have been like, oh, you have to destroy other vehicles to get your vehicle back. I just think for time wise as well, I really like that mechanic, because the first time I forgot about that when it broke, like, oh no, what's going to happen here? And again, because it does have a sense of ownership, because imagine too, if your car breaks, you got to get a new one, you would just, they would feel like interchangeable. Even if you could go back to your shop and put all those same parts in there, I feel like you said you would just lose that like specialness that you have, that connection you have to the vehicle. So a little touch, but I liked it.
It seems like because you can, like, any car you find in the world, you can take it, bring it back to your garage, add it to your library, so to speak. That's a very crackdown thing as well, which I really like.
Okay.
But it seems like once you've done that, like any upgrade that you've done on your, I guess, any other vehicle, you can do for free on this new car as well. So I think that's a nice touch as well. You don't have to kind of like grind through some of those, because sometimes you pick up one of these cars and they don't even have a freaking boost on it. So it's like, I'm not going to start from scratch and like spend all this money to get all this boost going. So it's,
but then Chum Bucket's like, this vehicle's amazing. So you're like, it must be worth some parts, right?
Yeah.
But it has no boost.
Maybe it has some cool new weapons on it that I want to use. But
yeah,
if it doesn't have boost, it's no good.
Yeah, it sucks. They did this whole camp, and that was one of those where he said that, like, oh, this is great, you got to bring it back. But it was in the middle of a main mission that I didn't complete, and it's one where I had to open up the garage, so it sucked. I had this main one. I just lost this cool vehicle I found, didn't get to strip it for any parts. So that was my bad. So I was like, okay, I better go open up this garage. So I did it.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, that was something I found kind of funny when you're taking out a camp. Like, the final step of destroying a camp is to like blow up the water filtration system.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, your allies have moved into this camp. I'm like, could we not have, saved the water filtration system and maybe just up our defenses? Like, am I gonna have to rebuild this? And so far, I haven't really actually gone back to those camps, and I don't know if you upgrade. Can you upgrade like any camp, or would it just be like,
I don't think it's any
name, but you go to like that one fortress up on the hill, like in the first area, and that kind of becomes your first home base, right?
I think some of them just become, it's a safe haven place, and that's about it. Maybe there might be some water refills there or something,
or get like
but nothing where I think every camp is as big as that. So
no, I love this game. I think it's a really good time. Definitely recommend it. I think it holds up really well. Like it plays like the second to second gameplay is really, really good. So I think anyone looking for like a Mad Max kick off Furiosa here should go pick this up. I don't think it's on Switch, but on Xbox and PlayStation, PC, I'm sure. So a good time all around.
Nice.
Any other thoughts on that one, or you want to move on?
Yeah, no, I'm ready to move on. Like I said, I was happy to scratch itch, and it's a fun game. So again, if anyone even thought about it that missed it, mostly everywhere this game is like $5-10. It's worth it. Even Taylor was thinking about picking up, like, well, you should do it, because I think that thing where it's like, even if you play it for a little bit, it's even worth that amount of money. Not saying you have to complete or anything, because there's hundreds of games nowadays, dozens every month, where it's like, oh, I want to play that. But it's I do at least feel they have isms that other games do, but there is a uniqueness to it that, like I said, I would compare it to that Lord of the Rings enemy, whatever they call it. Is it enemy system, or I thought there was a different name for it.
The Nemesis system?
Nemesis, I think. Yeah, it's like that, where again, not that it's to that level, but it's something that this game has that others don't. So
Yeah, no, it's the kind of game that's just going to sit on the hard drive for months and months, or maybe even years, and just like, Friday nights late, I just want to drop this on and play for a couple hours kind of thing. So I'm excited to do that. Cool. How about, I want to talk about Shadow of the Erdtree earlier. Let's talk about another DLC that recently released. So we talked about at Summer Game Fest, there was a kind of, not out today, but an out tomorrow release for Alan Wake 2 Night Springs, which is a 3-episode DLC expansion for Alan Wake 2. I have... where do I want to start with this? I'll say that I played through about half of it, so like an episode and a half, and then I uninstalled the game.
Oh, no. That's not good. Now,
I really, really did not vibe with what they were doing
Okay.
here.
Do you
So
think any of this would have helped if you had played? Because I know you had played. Gosh, what's the other game that
Control.
has Control? Yeah. So you played that, but Quantum Break. I know you hadn't. Would that have helped at all, or is
No,
it
I
more?
mean,
Just,
so it's like it's the guy from Quantum Break, but like it's his character from Alan Wake 2. So it's like I
okay.
know who he is, and like I played enough of Control. That's not necessarily what it is. So yeah, for anyone who forgets, Night Springs is kind of it's very much like a Twilight Zone type of thing, where it's these almost what if scenarios, fantasy scenarios
Okay.
within the world of Alan Wake. There's two elements of it that are pretty disappointing to me. One is that they're at least through the episode and a half that I got through. Um, there's no new locations. Like there might
Oh,
be
okay.
a new color filter over an area you played through before, but it's like the same areas that you've been to before, but now there's just like new content there, and you're playing like a new character as you go through here. But the main thing is like through these two episodes, it's pretty much just like combat trials. Essentially, it's just
That
doing
sucks.
fighting, which is the thing I liked the least of Alan Wake 2. It got to a point where I
Yeah.
just put the game on the easiest difficulty because I'm like, I don't want to engage with this combat. It sucks. It's boring. It's not fun. It's janky. And I just want to get through them. And then I can get back to the exploration, the detective work, the finding cool areas, the trippy stuff. That's what I want to be there for. The combat is not it. And so the fact that that's kind of what this DLC is that's why I uninstalled, because I'm like, I don't care. Like I am not
Oh.
deep enough of a Remedy head to need to see this level of like interesting what if scenario.
Yeah.
If like the gameplay, and it's not even that long, but it's just that's how little interest I had in doing the rest of this. And it was one fight that I died 2 or 3 times because it's just 100 enemies, and like you're given like a million, a million rounds. You have like infinite ammo. It's not really meant to be like a survival horror thing, more just like combat challenges. And it's just absolutely not what I wanted. So ultimately, I think I'm just not the audience for this. But I was like,
Yeah.
I liked Alan Wake 2. This seems like fun what if scenarios. I'd like, even if they're an hour long, cool. I'd love to do like a little hour long mystery with some crazy like character that you don't normally get to play as. But that's not really what it is. And like from the story perspective, maybe there's something that ties it together at the end. But I didn't really care much for the story in the first one, or even what I was doing in the second one. There wasn't really much to it. It was pretty simple, and even if there's like voice acting, new cutscenes and whatnot, it just was not for me. So
Dang.
I don't know what the recommendation here is. I guess just like if you're deep into Remedy and you need to see everything they do, obviously you're not going to wait for my recommendation. But if you played Alan Wake 2 and you didn't like the combat, don't buy this. It's not going to be worth your time. It's like I don't need more of it. I got just the right amount, I guess, in the main game, playing on easy mode and just not really engaging with it. So I think you should still buy this game, Travis. Alan Wake 2. But you don't need to pick up. You don't need to pick up Night Springs. Just pick up the base game and play through that, and then maybe the second DLC pack will be something different. But on that one, I'm definitely going to wait for impressions. But there's
So they are doing a second DLC pack.
Yeah, they announced two sections. The other one's called Lake House, I think, is the second one. And so I don't know if that's supposed to be more of like a story expansion. I don't think they've really talked about it yet, other than just like the name of it, unless I've missed something.
I just wonder because I remember last when we did the review of that, I was saying that I was probably going to buy it in October when they're doing that physical collection of you get Alan Wake 1, 2, and this DLC.
Okay,
I'm wondering if that's going to be. I would imagine maybe on there. I would hope because then you kind of get the whole.
Yeah, I mean, if
thing
you're
there,
getting the deal of 1 and 2, I guess, and I presume it's the remaster of 1.
I believe so. Yeah.
So I mean, that's probably worth it. If it's like $80, that's probably worth it.
I think it is.
For
like
what it is.
It's for all. It's like a kind of a game of the
DLC you
year
could see as
sort
an
of
add-on,
thing.
but you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I mean, maybe
well,
you'd like the combat, and therefore maybe you'd want to go for these extra combat challenges, or maybe even just like because you can pick any of the episodes. You don't have to go. You don't have to finish 1 to get to 2. So if you're a control head and you just want to play as Jesse some more in this mission, you could just jump straight to that and do nothing else. But I wish I had maybe waited and listened to like reviews or something. But I just impulse bought it because I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I want some more of this. But that's what I was saying with Shadow of the Erdtree. Like, it is rare for single player games like this for me to even care enough about the DLC to want to buy it and play it.
Yeah.
But even rarer for me to actually like it. And this is a case where, it's that 50-50 once again. Elden Ring, it's great. Alan Wake 2, not like it. Not worth my time. And thankfully this is like fairly cheap, I think, so I don't feel like I wasted a lot. I think the second DLC is like a separate purchase. I don't think I bought all of it, but I could be wrong. I'm clearly not super knowledgeable on this stuff.
No, thank you. I just added control to my backlog list there because
There you go.
that's another one.
Have you started? Because when I saw your account, you hadn't really done anything yet on
Yeah,
your account.
so I have my 2 lists right now. It's
What's your name is TBS1, right?
yeah,
Or
TBS 101. Yeah. So I just have my games I'm waiting for. So those are just games that I just don't want to forget about. That's listed as private right now. I got to change it to public. Right now it's just replacing Killer Bean. But there's a
Oh, maybe
couple...
that's why. Yeah, change it to public. I want to see what you're doing on here. And anyone who is on Backloggd, I know Clay made a Backloggd account. I think
Yeah.
Bubs did too. Make sure you add Travis on there.
But
And
my
anyone
ge-
else. It's a very
my-
fun website.
My games to finish and or play I have going on, and that's like a mix of either games like Elden Ring that I want to finish, or games that I like. Another one is Shadow War. I never beat that sequel to Lord of the
Okay.
Rings game, and then there's games like the Alan Wake games, Ragnarok, Control now, and then Baldur's Gate. So that's where it's like, so it's a mix of games that I kind of know, and I have them in right now order of planned playthrough. I think I got to change a couple of them, but right now the plan is Elden Ring and then Alan Wake. I guess Star Wars will be there, but it's like I'll remember that one because Taylor will bug me about it. And right now I'll make it public eventually, but I just got replaced in Killer Bean and I should have added it there. I guess I forgot to save is I've been talking about this game for years, and I think they said it sold or did like 50,000 units on Xbox. I finally want to play Hypercharge, and I think I want to get that for the stream as well, because I've had that I think for like the first year or so, or even year and a half, it was just on PC, so I didn't get around to it. And I remember I went to Switch, and now it's on Xbox. But this game is like, again, what happens is every couple years this thing trends. Everyone's like, this game's fucking awesome. Like, look at it, it's so cool. And it's like every time, like, yeah, it does look cool. Like that looks right up my alley. So I think I'm gonna get that, and I'm gonna motivate myself by having it for the stream and doing some stuff on, because I feel like it's a game we could have some fun with. But I don't know how it's played. But that's been a game. I think it's
I have
like
it on
20
Steam,
bucks. So
and I played for a few hours, and it was a good time.
yeah, it's just
I think
Toy
it'd be more
Story
fun
guy,
co-op
so...
though, for sure.
Yeah.
For anyone who
So-
doesn't remember, Hypercharge Unboxed, that's the game where you kind of play as action figures, so you're kind of small characters in a
Yes.
regular sized world. and
Toy
you're shooting
stores,
enemies down.
houses, yeah, and it's like my love of
Grounded,
Toy
that sort
Story,
of thing.
and also I loved Army Men back in the Nintendo. Me and Taylor every day are waiting for a remaster or remake of Army Men. I think we've talked about this. You've never played Army Men, right? Where you were
I
playing
did see a
as...
couple of copies of that this weekend. At
Oh
the
yeah,
game
you're
thing.
playing as... If you didn't know, you play as toy soldiers.
I think I have one or two of those games on my backlog list, actually.
Oh,
'cause
it's
I,
good,
I
yeah.
want to check them out at some point, but I don't even know the platforms and whatnot.
Yeah, and there's missions like you're in your mom's kitchen, like you get the element, you die. Like it's very similar to Toy Story, where it feels like the kids are playing it, but you are the soldier in the story, and you're the green. And multiplayer was great too, because that's when like, oh, you could play as the blue one. So but yeah, that's RAM. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I'll have to wait and see the combat, because to me that almost sounds like if you were to tell me, oh hey, Hellblade 2 has some DLC, but it's mostly just combat. For me, as I've always said, that was my biggest critique of that game. I go, well, that's not something I would dive into, right? Like, so that's where I'll have to wait and play it. Because same thing, my intention of playing Alan Wake is not I want to play like combat fighting. That's not anything I've seen of like, I hope it has this. So
yeah,
but...
I I'm coming there for the detective work, for the horror stuff, and it just seemed a bit one note. Like that's something where God of War Ragnarok had that Valhalla DLC, which was like a roguelike mode, and there was story elements to it, but it was like advertised as like, this is like roguelike where you're doing combat challenges and stuff, and that was great marketing for me. It's like I didn't buy it, even though I love the game, but it was like it told me exactly what it was, and so I don't know, maybe I'm just dumb and didn't do my research, but I kind of felt like that's not really how they advertised this Night Springs thing. But
it didn't look like that either. I feel like it was more head trippy and stuff.
I think they focused more on like the characters and like the setting rather than what the actual like gameplay of it is. But it is so short anyway that I don't know, it makes sense.
Still installed it though. It's not
I know.
not short.
That was probably a bit hasty. I probably should have just like cooled down and come back the next day. But I was like, you know what? I could use the hard drive space right now with Elden Ring, needing to install that again. And so, I was like, see you later, Alan Wake. I'm not into this. Yeah. There's only so much time in the day. I don't have time to play games that I don't like.
Well, that's not the way you want to spend the time. There's too many games. So.
Let's take one last break, and then I'll bring up one more game for the day. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Last game I wanted to shout out here is a game called Humanity, which came out last year on PlayStation. It was a PlayStation exclusive. And then, after that year-long exclusivity, it is now on Xbox via Game Pass as well.
I
So an
see it
easy
on
pickup.
your Backloggd here. Popular friends, and you're my only
Playing, yeah, I'm
friend.
playing it
So
right now. I don't know if you remember this one, Travis, but if you don't, you should definitely do a quick YouTube,
I'm
uh,
doing that right now. Yeah,
or
I'm
yeah,
looking
just
at it.
Google image it. But this is a puzzle game. This is a 3D puzzle game in which essentially masses of people
Mm-hmm.
come out of one door and you got to lead them to another door, another exit. That's like the core, that is the core conceit of like the actual puzzle mechanics of it. So it starts out pretty simple. You play as this cute little dog and you just put arrows down
Oh
essentially, and
yeah,
that will tell the people to like turn at this corner, go around this way, and you lead them to this gate. So it starts out with that. It's pretty
it's a lot of
simple.
people.
It's a lot of people. It starts out pretty simple. You're telling them to go around this corner. Eventually, it's like, okay, I got to push this block first, and then it's like, oh, there's a conveyor belt. Then eventually, you're getting like a jump command, so you can tell them to jump at a certain point. But I think there's a few layers to why I'm loving this game so much. One is what you just said, all the people. This game is insane. I don't think I've ever seen this many characters on screen in any game in my life. It gets to a point where there are literally thousands, maybe even a million like humans running
It
around, and
looks like it. There's some
they're
huge
so
crowds.
derpy. It looks like Roller Coaster Tycoon or something, where they're just aimlessly walking through the park, but they're just doing exactly what you tell them to, and nothing more, nothing less. They have no brain of their own, and yeah, so like that's kind of the first, like. Also, one thing I find really interesting about this game is like I feel like puzzle games don't really usually have like an act structure to them, but this game does kind of have like an overarching narrative, and there are like distinct acts where I'd say the first act is really just introducing all those basic mechanics: jumping, turning, throwing a couple hoops at you. Puzzles eventually get more difficult, and then there's added challenge in each level where there's a Goldie who's like a giant gold human, and if you lead the people through the Goldie and bring them to the exit, then you get like bonuses, which give you like different costumes you can put on the humans and other unlocks and things like that. And then, Travis, I'm guessing you're not going to play this game at any point. This is not going on your backlog list. What is that?
I don't think so
fair
right
to
now.
say?
Not with what I have. No, but
Yes.
it looks interesting. I like the
So
idea
let me
of guiding
spoil a
people.
couple things then. And
Yeah.
for anyone who does not want the spoiler, once again, this is on Game Pass. I don't know if it was on PS Plus or is. I don't know how much it is, but I love this game. If you like puzzle games, I highly recommend it. So there's my, if you don't want to hear the spoilers, there's my parting gift to you. But getting to the spoilers, in Act 2, it gets even crazier where eventually there are others that are introduced, and others are different people that you do not control, but they are they're the opposition to you, and so
Yeah.
they will get in your way. They'll push blocks out of the way, and then eventually the others get like fucking lightsabers and like laser pistols, and they'll start gunning you
no.
down and killing you. So your people are now vulnerable to getting killed, and so you have to lead. And it starts out fairly simple. You have to hide behind walls or like push blocks in the way so they can't hit you, so that way you can get to the exit. But then, Travis, it gets more and more crazy where you eventually get a command just called gun and hit. And so you can now equip your people. If they walk through the gun or hit, they'll get equipped with these laser pistols or laser batons. And then it essentially turns into like an RTS game where there are these huge
cool.
battles of thousands of these people with guns and batons, and they're just wailing into each other, flying off cliffs, all sorts of crazy stuff happening. All the while, you still just have to lead your people to the exit. Like that core gameplay is always there, but then like just the layers and layers and layers upon it gets even crazier into like these humongous freaking battles that are insane. And like the gameplay mechanics of it are like fairly simple. It's two enemy types and they auto attack, so you're like only controlling them to a certain extent. But man, like the puzzles that they build around this is like, yeah, at the end of the day, it is always still a puzzle game. And so like to find the puzzle solution to win this RTS battle is such a crazy idea, and not where I thought this game was going to go. I thought like near the end of Act 1, I thought I was like about done the game. I thought I was, I'm probably a couple more difficult puzzles. I'm going into like a boss type puzzle level. And then it went into that whole section with all these people. And now I'm in this section where I'm getting other commands where like I can just get this direct follow command. So rather than just following arrows, they like follow me around directly. And so that feels once again very much like an RTS type thing.
Yeah.
And you're going and you're doing like stealth sequences. There's like, enemy sight lines, and you have to kind of sneak them around this. It's crazy how much this game keeps layering on top of itself in totally unexpected ways, crazy ways. And it just makes for this thing where, man, in the first hour or two, what I was enjoying, this basic kind of simple, fun block pushing puzzle game, has just evolved into this insane game that I can't even like describe in one genre anymore. It's just an amalgam of all these different things. It's doing so much, and it's doing it all like super well. Like there hasn't been like maybe one or two puzzles that were kind of tedious and annoying, but out of like, I don't know, 50 or 60 puzzles that I've done, like all of them are interesting in some way, and those goldies add like extra challenges. So if you like, if you just want to get to the end of the level, usually that's not super duper challenging, but then to get like 100% completion on all of them is this whole other thing. So I cannot praise this game enough. This is going to be one of my favorite puzzle games of all time, I think, when I'm finally done with it. It is.
It's high praise.
It's so good. Yeah, like the mechanics are great. It's goofy and silly, and like the aesthetic of it is so special and weird, and the story it's telling, and like obviously there's, there's kind of this meta narrative to it of like humanity and what people do, and a choice, and like people warring against each other, and they're doing it without really thinking about what they're doing. There's this element to it. If you really want to think on a heady type level of what's going on, you can really get pretty in the weeds on it, but it's just so freaking good. So yeah, once again, Game Pass drop, highly recommend. I think I'm almost done with it now. I think I have 1 or 2 more worlds to go. But yeah, just so, and there's even like a custom level editor, so I'm sure I can just download more levels if I want when it's all said and done.
That's fun.
Challenges, like there's some levels that I have skipped the goldies, so I'm gonna go back and get 100% completion. It's just such a freaking great game. So yeah,
it's cool.
A nice surprise Game Pass drop there. Highly recommend.
Yeah, well, it's the lasers and stuff intrigued me, so I don't think it'll be anytime soon. But that's an interesting turn. So
yeah, like I said, maybe it was in those trailers, but I kind of forgot or something. But yeah, it's just not where I expected the game to go. So yeah, good stuff. Shoutouts to humanity as a whole, and shoutouts to you, Travis. This is a very fun episode. Just a classic games we've been playing episode, but ended up being a lot since we've been doing all these showcases and whatnot. We haven't had a chance to catch up on what we've been playing, so it was nice to kind of debrief on what we've been playing for the last like month here. So
yeah, it was that and Hellblade pretty much for us.
Yes,
so it was nice just to kick back and everything. So
yeah, next week's episode, it's a little up in the air right now just because it's the holiday here in Canada.
Always tough, yeah.
So we might pre-record something. I might just do a solo episode. Not sure yet, but all you gotta do, subscribe to the feed, stay tuned, and you will see what we are doing next week. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.